And we're live, and apparently the transition works, which is really, really cool. Welcome everyone to the first ever and Evan Studios Anti-Talk podcast. Let me try to fit my screen here a little better. Still a little confusing because I have a lot of windows regarding Fleeting Aries open right now. Isaac and I are desperately trying to finish the Christmas patch. However, as usual, I keep adding dialogue. So the problem is that there's like a few conversations that I thought was already in the game at like different periods, or they happened during the Hentai scenes, and they're not. And there's a few incredibly important pieces of dialogue. One is after Jack and Fujiko do their thing in the pantry, where Fujiko explains to Jack that she's not actually Hayame. I thought that dialogue was already in the game. Clearly, it's not. And then there was another one right before the threesome with Adriana, Arthur, and Robert. There's also a big piece of dialogue that should be there and it wasn't. So we're trying to wrap things up, but there's always room for more improvement, and we always end up doing it. Anyway, today we're not here to talk about Evan Studios as usual. Well, yeah, I can say that we're not here to talk about Evan Studios. Today we're here to talk about Hentai in general, but first and foremost, I want to thank everybody that showed up, everybody in chat right now. Foster as usual, Ariane. I'm glad you guys like the background. A lot of our stuff, honestly, has been how to put this. It's been due for an upgrade in terms of design. I did this Anti-Talk podcast kind of like in a rush. I didn't have a lot of ideas, so I decided to add a hand with a tie with what do you call it, the megaphone on her hand. Get it? Hand, tie, talk, megaphone. Get it? Yeah, I'm not very brilliant when it comes to like being put on the spot, and I had like 40 minutes to do the whole thing. Still, I think it's pretty good. Also, did you guys enjoy the transition? Looked pretty good, didn't it? I finally figured out how to do transitions. Now it doesn't crash. Did you guys notice it? Like, instead of like being like, see, there's a small fade. See, that looks good, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm really proud because I learned how to click on stuff. Anyway, this is a podcast that people have been asking me to do for quite some time now, and it's basically just talking about hentai in general, where I explain what makes a good hentai game, some of the best hentai games that I've played in the past, and I feel like hentai is like everything else. If we don't understand where we started, it's hard to understand where we are at, or how the scene has evolved in a sense. I personally found out about hentai there was a segment way back, maybe like in the late 90s, early 2000s, in the Portuguese TV, which is honestly called Hentai, and it was on a Portuguese channel called Sick Radical. And basically it was, so what that hentai channel did was, it was not a channel, it was a segment. It just played every night at midnight, and I thought it was a show kind of like Dragon Ball, and now you have episodes, or I don't know, like Pokemon, and now you have episodes. And there was a segment called Hentai, which I thought it was like episodical, but it wasn't. Obviously, there is no it was just different hentai movies, and I used to play at midnight. And it was just all sorts of hentai movies, probably a lot of them that you can find online or whatever, but it was basically just Japanese hentai, small 20 to 30 minute episodes, and that's where the first time I heard about hentai. However, while the hentai animations looked, well, pretty much as good as 90s anime looks, the old hentai games did not look very well. Just to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. Let me see if this... Okay, yeah, I think this is legit. Yeah. Let me just write here, legit, to make sure that... Why can't I save this? Why is Windows... Oh, okay, Windows tripping because I messed one of the characters. So... This might give you an idea of why we weren't like huge on hentai back in the days. Nowadays, hentai might look really good, and some of them might look like super realistic and whatnot. But back in the 90s, hentai looked like this. It looked like someone has done something in paint, like most of the DOS games at the time. This was pretty much how hentai games looked at the time. And the hentai genre wasn't very big. And then somewhere around 2009, there was like a huge boom on hentai. Everybody started having like Cintiqs and stuff like that, and making like super cool drawings and whatever. And basically, the quality of hentai just completely, it got out of like. It blew everything that came before it out of the water. Like, some games looked really, really good. The drawings looked extremely professional. Almost like something you will see in like... almost like something you will see in just any regular anime. Any regular quality anime. The quality was there. You knew... the people that were doing it had quality to draw for almost like any cartoon, any anime that you've ever seen. And even to this date, there's a few hentai artists that work Sailor Moon vibes. Even now to this date, there's a lot of professional studios that have people drawing for anime and stuff like that. That secretly, with other alliances and whatnot, also make. They are also mangakas. They make hentai. They make hentai doujinshi. A lot of them try to like keep their identities obviously a secret. But there's people that are very talented drawing hentai nowadays, and these kind of like started somewhere in the 2008, 2009. We started seeing incredibly talented people drawing hentai, and then there was like the boom of games, like I talked about in the last in our last podcast. And basically, even though there were a lot of restrictions for making games at the time when it came to engine, you could tell by the art that we were getting into a new age in terms of quality, in terms of hentai. Like, we saw this growth, and some of the initial games where you saw that were the ones created by studios like Scale Gardens. I remember also Circle Kame also being one of the pioneers when it came to like high quality games. Technobreak, that you can find in our Discord, is definitely one of the pioneers when it comes to the current genre. And obviously this was before the Rance games and the whatever DOS games that people were playing. We're talking about the new age of hentai games with RPG Maker, with people doing them in Unix, people doing them in Unreal Engines. People are making hentai games in Unreal Engine. There's people making hentai games in all sorts of platforms nowadays. that you see that some of those games could easily be, maybe not AAA games, but some of those indie games definitely feel like someone incredibly talented and with a lot of passion decided to make hentai games instead of regular games. And what I want to do in this segment is basically show some of the games that I thought about through the ages felt like they were different, that they were better than the rest, not just from drawings, because for me hentai personally is more than just the drawings. I know that there's a lot of people that just want to see the drawings and the animations, but in my perspective, there's a lot of things that make an hentai game a good game. And not only you need to have a game where you don't have a lot of bugs, because no one wants to like crash and get soft lock and whatnot every 5 minutes. Obviously, you need art that you find attractive. Even though I've seen games being incredibly successful with just text. I've seen games with zero art being successful in Thai games. I've seen games being successful where you only have very small sprite art. It's not even like Street Fighter size pixel art. It's like we're talking about 48 pixels and still make it. But obviously, if you want to play like a complete game where you know there's many ways to make a great experience, but usually when you play a game, there's a bunch of factors that you want to have, and some of them are more obvious, like a good soundtrack. You want it to be to have like the text to have been proofread, where there's not a lot of mistakes, because that's a big turn off for a lot of people. You want a powerful story. You want to see context. You want to see. There's a bunch of stuff that is going to make an entire game look better. But then there's other stuff like immersion. There's other stuff like relatability. There's a bunch of things that you can use to make an entire game more powerful. But I'm going to show some of the games that go from platformers, and I feel like they are super good, and I'm going to explain why I feel like those games are good and what makes a good hentai game. And I'm going to explain other games that were great just because everything about them was amazing. And today I'm probably just going to pick up a couple of examples, and I'm probably going to use one of the most overused examples of all time, which is Virgin Island. I'm gonna check the image and see. I'm gonna check the image and check to see if I need to censor something here, which is really important because it's YouTube and we don't want to risk it. But this is Virgin Island, and it's probably one of the oldest hentai games that we can consider like the new age, the current age hentai games. And nowadays this game only has kind of like one drawback, which is the art at the time was made with it was created with the limitations of RPG Maker, which was the biggest one. Obviously, the size of the screen was, well, not very good. And even nowadays, if you use programs like Magpie, at the time, Virgin Island was a game that came to kind of revolutionize revolutionize the culture, because it was a type of game that did almost everything right. And even though when it came to map, it used mostly free assets. You can tell that there's a lot of time put into creating the maps. You can tell that there's a lot of time put into actually making the game look good. Instead of just trying to do something incredibly basic which feels like good enough to make your entire games. But this was definitely not the case. Like, you could tell that, well, a lot of it feels like it was parallaxes. Actually, no, wait. Then how does he build a map? This is crazy. He used a system that is so complex, so convoluted, that it's hard to tell how he made the maps. That's how good these maps were. It might be pictures that it calls from the game folder. No, it's not. This is how crazy it is. Like, I'll need to see how this happened, because some of his maps look crazy, like crazy bad. I don't know how he did it. It feels like it's just that one, but it was one of the first maps that had a very decent CG room, and the way he built the town at the time, everything felt like it was well put, even though it was mostly the very common assets that everybody uses. I'm gonna try and put this image in there, but it's probably not gonna work. And this will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. If I can... Wait, where did I save this? What just happened here? Is it... Yeah. This should give you an idea. Kind of want to move this. Also, for those people that don't know, the old man that you can see on the bottom left is the old man that I was mentioning the other day in the podcast. It was the first time where I saw this, like, the lewd old man that tries to get his way with the heroin. So you can tell that even though all the assets are the generic assets that everybody uses, he made the city feel very lively. All of them, all of the cities that he used. The soundtrack was also free assets, but it took the time to go online to try and find free assets instead of just using whatever is in the RTP. And even if you don't want to spend a lot of money in music and whatnot, there's a lot of places where you can find free music and royalty free stuff. In the internet nowadays, obviously there's a lot of sites that try to offer you free trials for this and that, but listen, if you're willing to put in the time, you're definitely able to find a lot of cool stuff, even if it's being used by other people. Doesn't matter. It's 100% better than the RTP, because that, I guarantee, has been used by a ton of people. And this use the whole map. Like, in the church you have the scenes and you have the CG room. The girl on the bottom right helps you sew your clothes, because the game has a clothes destruction system, which is super cool. And the less clothes, or the more deteriorated your clothes are, the different anti-attacks that the enemies can use on you. So there's a great balance between world scenes and story scenes and the enemy anti-attacks, which is extremely well done. The guy that forges you weapons tries to get at you. In the inn, there's people that try to get at you. So the world felt very lively. The characters felt like relatable, not relatable, but something like believable. It actually feels like a real town, which I feel like it does a lot for the immersion when you start to like get the personality of the characters, where every character feels like it has a different personality, and it's kind of like you see someone do something and you're like, oh man, that's straight up Fujiko type of thing, or that's, of course Arthur said something like that. You start seeing all the characters have like personalities, and this was one of the games from when it was done, which was like 2012. It definitely felt like this game was way ahead of the pack, like way ahead of the pack. not only because of the art, which obviously I cannot change show here on YouTube, but it had the day and night system, which at the time felt revolutionary. There was little to no bugs. There were multiple routes. There were multiple fetishes. You know that there was a lot of time investment put into this game that you just didn't in general see in other games at the time. That, along with a bunch of other reasons, was the reason why Virgin Island was revolutionary at the time. It had some voice acting. The game had a very decent length. It had animated sprite sex. It had basically a bunch of stuff that people have used and tried to replicate for over a decade, considering how good this game was. And this is it obviously it had NTR, it had a bunch of fetishes, but just the scope, it felt like so immense. This game, in terms of hentai, felt like playing Final Fantasy VII or a Zelda or like Majora's Mask, or what was it called? I think it was Majora's Mask, where the game felt completely like heaps and bounds ahead of everything else at the time. Nothing was ever on quite the spectrum of Virgin Island. Virgin Island was, it did everything everyone else did, and it did it better. And because of that, there were quite a few developers throughout the times that felt like they were playing a different ball game. And you can tell this. Usually you can tell this because the best way to put this, so to speak, is that most of these games still hold water nowadays. They might not be amazing if you go and play them. Obviously, it's an old engine. You need to use Magpie to see the images in decent size and whatnot. But when it comes to story, when it comes to context, when it comes to the passion that you can see that was put into the game, in many ways, sorry, you can tell that these games were slobber knockers way back then. And these games, some of these games have like 12, 13, 14 years. Obviously, they don't always feel like it, but yeah, time goes by fast. This is another example. This is Ariadne, from the same creator of Magica, and the line for success is the same line. The line for success is literally the same line. It's basically an adventure game. You are a solo female main character, male character. And this was kind of like the games that got the best feedback at the time. Was people weren't very much into the male main character. The RM games weren't that big. There were a few exceptions, obviously, like the Monster Hunter Girl, whatever it was called, the Rance games. But in general, the games that got the best reception were mostly female main character games. It doesn't matter if it's one or two, but also you didn't want to have too many female characters, because then it feels like the writing is done very poorly. It's not that it can't be done, but usually when you have to write for a bunch of different characters, you end up not giving enough time to all of them, and they feel like very shallow characters. So usually the single or the duo female main characters, Jesus Christ, are usually the games that used to sell the best. And if I show you, oh no, I don't have. I can probably make in a second. Give me just 1 second. I can show you an example of the maps beside Ariadne and the maps beside behind Sacred Eyes and whatnot, and I can show you that there's kind of like almost like a formulaic way to success, so to speak, or at least it definitely feels like it. Yeah, okay, this is not RPG Maker VX says. For Sacred Ice, it's the same thing. If you look at the game, you're gonna see that the maps and whatnot, it feels kind of, it follows kind of like a formulaic type of design, but still, it's way better than most of the stuff that you see nowadays. Even nowadays, there's people that that fail to do something as simple as this, and which is kind of sad. You definitely can tell that there's a lot of people that don't put any effort into their games, like any effort, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that don't care about that stuff. They just want to play. They just want to play their hentai. They don't care. They, as long as it looks good, as long as it's animated, whatever, it's fine, and that's cool. You know, hentai is like music. It's like everything else. You know, there's a little bit for everyone. You just need to look for it and find it. But this is just a map. The events are not here, and the doors and whatnot. But you can tell that someone tried to create a city here that felt kind of like live. You had like the market, you had like the riverside, you have like the poor people area on the bottom left corner, and the cities feel kind of like something that you want to try to explore, something that you want to meet the characters, you want to stumble upon entire scenes. All of these things, all of these details, especially when you play a lot of hentai games, they start growing on you. The fact that when you step on grass you hear grassy sounds, that the character can actually walk on water, especially if you're a developer and you understand the limitations of the engines, then you see people try to do stuff that you know, oh wait, the engine doesn't do this by default. So since you see all these squares, basically everything that is coded in RPG Maker is coded in a square. And the RPG Maker squares are 32 pixels by 32 pixels, so they are incredibly small. And since the characters are only one square tall, you cannot put the characters in water, technically. But there's a few ways to go around it in RPG Maker, and you can actually make it so the water only goes till half of the character's sprite, and it kind of feels like you're actually going inside the water and whatnot. All of these small details, for me, add up to a great game. Obviously, the story and the quality of the art and whatnot are going to always be the main reason why an entire game will succeed, especially if it's like a visual novel or if it's a short story. Depending on what it is, there's definitely a few things that you're going to value more than others. But there's also very simple games that ended up being incredible games. So when it comes to old games, where they are made in like the Fleeting Eye style, where basically you have a premise for a story and then you have dialogue and context. That's pretty much the most important things: story, dialogue, context. Obviously the art, but those are the cornerstones for making a good entire game in this genre, which is, you know, same as always. It's the story, it's the context, it's the dialogue, it's the art. Those four things are going to be the base. If those four things are good, you can get away with almost anything. But you can also tell when a developer has went above and beyond to make a good game, other than just, oh, I have a good story and I know how to write, let me put into this. And the examples are obviously Scale Gardens, Circle Kame, Turtle Circle, as the name is in English, was known for doing this. They did Parallel Fantasy, they did Arms Divisor. They haven't done games in a lot of time, but you know, the games that also looked kind of like retro can also look pretty good. I don't know if I can show this, but I'm gonna try and make this. I mean, it's just penny, so it's probably okay. I just have to censor this a little bit. This is another game that I personally enjoyed, even though I showed you that game before, so this is going to seem like kind of hypocritical. Like, wait, but wasn't that a problem at the time? So why was that bad and why is this good? So there was a game called Mature Quest where you can see the sprites don't look that amazing, but the point of this game was to get that like retro charm from the original Dragon Quests, with the Dragon Quest looking characters and whatnot. And sure, the game itself might not look good in terms of like the gameplay, when you walk around the maps, the way the maps are drawn, the quality of the assets and whatnot, but they work in that style. And this game had a lot of things that made it amazing, even though of that style, because the art was great, the story was great, the context was great, and the sheer size of the game, which is really important. When a game says, well, this game has great art, but the game lasts 10 minutes and he has like 10 enticings, it's probably going to be like, wow, this could have been such a much better game. So even the sheer size of the game, without artificially inflating the size of the game, is something that one can learn to value with time, especially when you play a lot of games, because no one wants to play an entire game where you're playing, you're having a lot of fun, you're having a blast, you're like, oh my god, I'm so glad I found this game, and then after 20 minutes, boom, it's done. And then you spend months waiting for the developer to release something else, and then he releases another 20-minute game, and it's like, oh man, it leaves you that taste in your mouth, like, man, I wish it did something other than demo games. Like, I want to play a true adventure. I want to play a story. I want to get immersed into it. Mature Quest, while the maps look like old age Dragon Quest, you can tell that he made a metric fuck ton of assets for the game. Even though if it was in like this goofy 90s style, it just works. Because the story is amazing, the dialogue is incredibly good. The game is super long, like super long. The game is, you can probably play for more than one day, for sure. Like, this is not the type of game that you end in one day. It has so many scenes. I think it's like 750 scenes with like 40 variations or whatnot. The game is really, really, really good. I'm sad that whoever used to develop this nowadays only makes like visual novels or simple games, because those also sell. So what happens when, and this is what I was saying the other day, what happens when you have a game that you spend hours and hours and hours trying to improve, with dialogues, with music, with great mapping, shading, scripts and whatnot, and you work on that for like a year of your life, and you're super proud of what you accomplished, and you put it up for sale, and you sell 100 units at $10, and then you make a quick VN, you use a fifth of the amount of art that you used for the other game. It's a quick VN, you just all control, you see all the enticings that you need to see, you're done in 20 minutes. It took him like 3 months to finish the game, and when it goes out for sales, it sells like 1,000 copies at $10 each. So you made 10 times more money spending a quarter of the time of development time. That messes with you as a developer. You want to make good games, but at the same time you're like, I'm just being like an inefficient entrepreneur. Like, why am I working so hard on this when it's gonna sell X, when I can work 4 times less and sell X times 10? It makes no sense. Like, it becomes really hard to develop time into making games. You start making quick cash grabs that you might not actually believe as much on them as you did on your previous products, but at the end of the day, you know, bills have to be paid, and money is for the vast majority of people, money is a great motivator. so they are going to stick to the cash grabs. And basically, these other games sell better, and this game that might be a little gimmicky or might have not have had the right amount of word of mouth, because I can almost guarantee you that you guys play this game, you find like an English translation. There's plenty out there on the internet, and you play this game, you're going to get super into it. You're going to get very immersed in the experience. And just like this, there are so many games. That once you give them a shot, once you give them a chance, you will see that you're going to find a bunch of there's a bunch of great games out there. A lot of them have been translated, but you definitely can see how there's a lot of games and there's a lot of developers that were passionate about creating games at the time, and then the thing that I said the other day happens, which is, why are these guys selling 10 times what I'm selling when they're putting 10 times less effort? So at the end of the day, you kind of question yourself, why am I making these amazing maps? Why am I making this amazing soundtrack? Why am I making? But although there's not as many connoisseurs in the game as there are people just looking for a quick fap, so to speak, I'm incredibly grateful that there's developers like the guys that made Mature Quest, and there's a lot more developers, and there's a lot more games that I want to go out and take my time to celebrate and tell you guys to experience. But a lot of people just downright quit after a while. You keep waiting for more games because they actually make great games, but they quit for easier work. A great example is this guy. Let me just make sure that. Oh yeah, well, there's a lot to censor here. Gotta keep gotta keep YouTube clean. Let me just censor this right quick. And as soon as I'm done censoring this, wait, this is not necessary. Let me just censor this right quick so I can post it on YouTube. Okay, I think this is clean. This is another example, and this is a perfect example of a game that was great, and then the developer stopped making games, but he kept making stuff. The problem is, or it's not necessarily a problem, but the thing is, he no longer makes games. This guy only makes doujins nowadays. This was a very short, funny story. You go around just collecting Hentai scenes, and basically your human husband goes to war, or what? He goes on a mission. I don't remember exactly what's the story, but he goes on a mission, and while you're in town, a lot of people, want to take their time to help you around, and it's obviously, it's obvious how they help you. And this game was great. The maps were not amazing, but the story was great. The art was great. There's no bugs. There's this goofy soundtrack. It has the right amount of length. It's not too long, not too short. You have something like 20 plus, maybe 30 scenes, all of them with their unique art and whatnot, and unique goofy characters and whatnot. It's a short, silly game, and this was an example of a game that I personally thought it was super cool, but sadly, the developer makes way more money just drawing doujins and selling doujins, and a lot of them he doesn't even have to color. He just, he finishes the doujin in 3 months, he sells it, and he makes more money with way less effort than creating a game, because obviously the difference between creating a game and creating a doujin is everything besides the art. Because if you want to make a doujin, you just draw and that's done. That's the doujin right there. If you want to make a game, you need to make the maps, you need to make the dialogues. Well, you also need to make the dialogues for the doujin, but there's usually way more dialogue. You need to make the events, you need to make everything that is besides a doujin. So if you're still getting your art out there, and your art is the thing that you value the most about your work, if you're still getting it out there, and if you're putting in way less work into it, but you're getting way more results when it comes to money and earnings, it's pretty normal that these people at some point just decide to, no, you know what, I'm just going to stick to making dungeons. And another example of this is the creator of Machina, basically a game called Fallen Machina something something. I don't remember the whole name of the game. It's Fallen Machina something something. And the developer is Another Story. His name is literally Another Story. And I'm gonna show you guys the game. This is another game that I thought it was like a super cool adventure. It's kind of short, and the character kind of turns into a turbo slut way too soon for my taste. But even so, this is Fallen. This is listen. There's a lot of amazing games. I'm just talking RPGs right now. I'm strictly talking RPGs right now because I want to show you kind of like the formula for making like a great game. And this is an example of someone that also didn't use a lot of unique assets, but used them correctly. He didn't use a lot of. He used free songs, but he got some nice songs from the internet. He used them. The story is great. The art is great. What's the problem with Another Story? The problem, again, which you can see as a problem or not, this is just, guys discussing about games. Doesn't matter. Is that Another Story? It might still be making games, but he's definitely taking a lot of time, because most of the time Another Story just makes doujins right now. I think he has released like 3 or 4 ever since he released Fallen. Now, I know I have some privileged information about I know someone that knows him, and we kind of follow each other on X and whatnot, but I heard from someone that is close to him that is still working on games. But all the time that he's putting into doujins and whatnot, and he's using the Machina character and whatnot, the doujins are not bad. I've read them. They're pretty decent, but they're not even colored, so he doesn't have to put in that amount of effort. And if a game doesn't sell well, which I think that's not the case. I think that, as far as I know, Fallen has sold pretty decently on Steam. Fallen has sold pretty decently on the L site, but games take a lot of time to make. And if you want to make an amazing game, that's an amazing amount of time they're going to be putting into it. So if people don't appreciate all the time that you put into those small details, like the mapping, like the story, the context, or whatever, at some point you're going to question yourself, why am I putting all this time into this? Like, it's actually hurting the game. I could be releasing more enticings. I could be releasing all this garbage, and people are going to take it. People are going to buy it. But these are a few examples of games where I feel like the developer grabbed the game, and it was more than just the art, more than just the context. They decided to make something that was great no matter how you looked at it. Nothing about these games are lazy. Not the story, not the art, not everything. The amount of work that is put into it, you can tell that they dedicated a lot of time into these games, that there's a lot of passion into it. And as a developer, I tend to value that more than the common person. And I know that there's a lot of people that value those. The example is like Fleeting Aries. We have a pretty big following where people actually value all these small details in the game. There was another Morgan asked, have you ever played NTRPG 2? NTRPG 2 is a game where I personally did not enjoy it. I played the first and the second one. I did put some time into it, but at some point I was turned off, maybe because of the lack of actual art. But Morgan, I know why Morgan decided to say NTRPG, because it's a game like the one where a few that I mentioned earlier, where the game has no art at all. The game is just pretty much just animated sprites, so to speak. But according to most people that I have talked about the game, the story is extremely well done. I feel like the game just invokes a lot of feelings. I feel like I don't know if it's immersion or what it is, or if I wasn't just able to relate or something. But a lot of people say that the game hit like a truck. The NTR is so realistic. You kind of see like the feelings of devastation felt by the guy, but there's something there. There's something there. People definitely add nothing but praise for NTRPG and TRPG 2. But if I'm not mistaken, those games have no art, and I feel like at the time, what I felt about it was, it felt like too gratuitous, in a sense that everything was NTR and the character was like this helpless guy that just saw it happen, and the game kind of felt like this is a game about torture via NTR. This guy he knows what's going on, and the developer just said, let me think of all the ways that I can destroy this guy and put it all into a game. And it's as an NTR game, for people that want to evoke like these feelings, it feels like it's incredibly well done. But at some point, it kind of just feels like, to me, it kind of feels like hitting the guy that is on the floor. However, I feel like NTRPG is a perfect example of a game where you don't need to have heart to actually be able to like deliver a good game. And obviously the game has like a huge cult following. So who am I to say anyone that the game is bad? That is like the perfect example of a game where a lot of people might be put off for the fact that he has no art. But at the end of the day, the NTR is so well done that, you know. But that's the thing. If it works, why do things differently? You know, if it works, why add art? Why putting more time into it? Like, the maps are horribly done, if I remember correctly. It's literally everything is RTP. But it works. And then you have to question yourself, if it works, why change it? NTRPG is definitely an example of a game where I personally feel like it's not for me. But at the end of the day, it feels like the author definitely put a lot of passion into his writing. Is it a masterpiece? That will be a great debate. That will be a great debate, because the game has such a huge cult following. It's just the story that doesn't do it for me. It doesn't have it feels like it doesn't have much story. It feels like it's just constantly bashing on the boyfriend or the husband, I don't remember. Like literally constantly bashing on him, where all the town gets his way with the girl. And for whatever reason, I don't know if he enjoys it or not. I haven't played the game in such a long time. But for whatever reason, it just stays there. It just keeps, you know, it just stays there while everybody keeps torturing. Everybody keeps having its way with his girlfriend. She's basically the town bike. Everybody, you know. At some point, I don't know, but it felt like she was enjoying hurting him and whatnot. So my problem was, as a game, once I start looking at the stuff that I value, it felt like there's just no purpose anymore. There's just no purpose anymore. It's just Katrusha's NTR at this point. The story isn't leading anywhere. There isn't any character developing. We know what she is. We know who the boyfriend is. And it's just, oh, look in this scenario which will be cool to do NTR. Look at this scenario that will be cool to explore. Look at this scenario that will be cool to explore. I feel it lacks substance in terms of story. I feel like NTRPG is a great game if you want to like evoke those feelings, like I said before. But other than that, when it comes to to story, to context and whatnot, it just feels like it's just brutal. It's just brutal. It felt to me as an NTR, it's kind of like, you know, all the TV shows Seinfeld, they say it's a show about nothing. I feel like NTRPG at some point felt like it's an NTR about nothing. You just get cucked, period. And then they make a second one. That's literally how I felt about NTRPG. The NTR is pretty great. Basically, you're getting cheated on all the time. You definitely feel like you definitely feel the main character feeling miserable about it. But there's plenty other NTR games where I feel like, and even doujins, where I feel like it just goes, the story goes somewhere. Like the Shindle NTR doujins, I feel like the character development is so good. Especially that one that everybody knows, where the character in the end is like dreaming because she just OD'd. So in their final seconds, she imagines how her life will be if she had kept her nose clean, and if she had had the baby and whatnot. So she imagines like a life if she didn't make all bad decisions. And then a few panels later, you see like the syringe on the floor, and you realize that she OD'd and whatnot. I feel like a game should never stop progressing. You need to see progress. You don't want to play Street Fighter and your opponent has 100 times the health bar, and your punches and buddy's punches only do 1 damage. At some point, you're going to get tired of beating on the same character. It's going to be like, oh, it's just practice. At this point, I'm just bashing on the dude. And the RPG felt like it. I remember the ending of 2 hitting like a truck. No dialogue, no explanation. Just a room literally giving you a final nail in the coffin. Yeah, but I feel like progress on NTR is something that just works for me, like corruption. Because I'm here discussing what feels like is a good game. But at the end of the day, what is a good game for me might not be a good game for someone else. And that's absolutely true. NTRPG was definitely an example of a game where I feel like, oh, this wasn't a cash grab. He literally believes in the product. It's a great game. It's not for me. And then you end up thinking, what is important to make a good game? What makes this game better than the others? And I feel like while Virgin Island was a masterpiece because it done everything well, NTRPG in its own niche is going to end up being kind of like its own masterpiece. So it's really hard to point out what makes an amazing Hentai game and what makes a rubbish Hentai game. You can tell when someone is making a cash grab, but then it's selling, and if it's selling, doesn't it mean it's a good game? At the end of the day, questions like this suck. It's kind of like, well, obviously, McDonald's, you're overpaying for what you're eating, and it's all processed food. If you did it at home, it will taste better and it will do better, but you go to McDonald's, and McDonald's sells. And, you know, and you can't point to people like you do, because people virtual signal against McDonald's all the time. You tell people, man, why are you eating on a piece of shit restaurant, man? You're overpaying for garbage food. But does that stop people from eating at McDonald's? Why do you always have to eat like a super well done beef Wellington? That will be the Virgin Island, the Virgin Island type game. That will be the Sacred Ice type game. Why can't you sometimes have microwave food? You know, microwave food sometimes is also nice. It's quick. You get to the game, bing, bing, bing. The game lasts 20 minutes and you're done. But I can't help but yearn for masterpieces. I can't help but yearn for the game where the developer put in time on the maps, on the dialogue, on the scripts, on the daytime, nighttime, on the everything that makes the game feel like super immersive. Everything that makes the game, you look at the game and you feel like, I would have a hard time making this game better than it is. I love that about games. I love that about games. And personally for me, and this is me, because there's all types of NTR, and people say NTR type 1 and type 2 and type 3, and there's one where you actually enjoy being the cuck, and there's one where you actually enjoy taking the girl, and there's one where you guys just enjoy seeing each other have pleasure, so you invite other people into the marriage. There's all sorts of NTR. But even in those, even if I'm not the best person to judge them, because I just downright don't like them, because I feel like, oh, okay, there is no progress there. Mostly because for me, I put the story and I put the corruption. I put the progress in really high value when I play a game. I like to see development. I like to see progression. I want to see the character getting more corrupt and doing things that she wouldn't do at the beginning of the game, but then you feel that they're breaking all these barriers that you put there initially. So breaking the character is part of the story. Getting into situations where that will be unthinkable at the beginning of the game is something that I value. And there's a lot of games that do this. There's games that rush it a little bit, and then there's the typical, oh, I caught you smoking, so unless you do what I told you to do, and then even though the character is being coerced into doing something, it kind of feels like, oh, at this point he can do whatever. He's just taking it slow, but this character is done. There's very few games, I personally feel, there's very few games where the character comes out as an instant slut, like right away, and the game still manages to deliver. But there's definitely a few. I remember something Hero Ken. If you guys, I'll probably just post it here. Give me a second. This is an example of a game where I felt like, oh, this character is a slut right away, but somehow we still managed to deliver it, because wait, what's the RG of the thing? Oh, never mind. I put it on the desktop. Give me a second. There it is. This is I think the name is Boy Hero Can or whatever it's called. So I don't remember what was the reason, but you're a character that is not in the screen. You're like the boyfriend or the childhood friend of the female character that you see on screen, and the other guy is like your grandfather or whatever. And you guys, I think, are both living in his house and whatever. And then there's this mansion that people say that it's haunted, and you guys all move there. That's more or less the premise of the game. And then there's two female characters that you try to get with, but they end up falling for other people. You kind of like also have your moments with them, but mostly it's NTR. And even though right from the start it feels like the female character goes like, she starts doing whatever she wants and whatever the grandpa asks, it feels like there's still some progression. They get more and more dairy. They start doing right next to you, like you're both going through the mansion and he's groping her right next to you. They tell you to go through this narrow alleyway, so you're kind of like stuck while moving in between the walls, and from the other side you can see, but because the room is not very well lit, but you can see you're doing all these expressions of pleasure and whatnot, and you kind of have an idea of what is happening, but you can actually see it. The way the game was played out, it was great, even though right from the start you knew, oh, this character is a slut, and the game still managed to deliver. But then again, the way that it drew the scenes, the context is definitely what made this game rise above everything else, because the writing during the scenes is not great, and the story and the context is definitely carried the whole game. The art is pretty nice, but the context on the scenes and the story behind the game is definitely what puts the game to that next level. So there's definitely room for games to be lacking in this or that, and somehow still manage to become great games. Will this game have been better had the character been more reluctant to do some of the stuff early on, if it was more progressive and whatnot? I definitely feel like a more progressive corruption would improve the game, but still, it was a great game. And listen, this is the first podcast that we have about this, and I have probably hundreds of games to talk about. This is another example. I've already gave you examples of great games today. I honestly hope that you guys go and try those so you can see what was a good game like 15 years ago. But I promise you, every single game that I posted still holds water nowadays. There's still good games today. And Boyaru Ken, if I'm not mistaken, came out somewhere in the last 2 to 3 years. I might be pushing it like way back. It might have been more recent, but I'm gonna put it in that like time frame, like 2 to 3 years. And it's a great NTR game. I do hope that you play the English version, and that you, because a machine translation might not work, because this game, the story is a little bit convoluted. And another thing that I strongly suggest is that you follow a walkthrough, because once again, this game is kind of convoluted. But you know, the context, if you appreciate context, if you like the art, you're definitely gonna like this one. And since we're talking about more recent games, I'm gonna end up with this one game, and then on another episode we can talk about non-RPG maker games or non-RPG games. This is I'm gonna share this one because this one is a developer that makes mostly Hentai games. Mostly NTR games. And he has made a bunch, and almost all of them are really good. And another thing that is super good about him is that honestly, it feels really weird that he's only one person doing all these games, because he definitely puts a lot of time into it. So this guy, he has already released like 3 or 4 games. I'm going to be putting the RJ for the game out right here. Give me a second. I can just add text. You guys can follow this on. You guys can find this on Google or the L site. That's the RJ, and the RJ is important because you should find not only this game but the other games that he did. And this is another perfect example of, she kind of is a turbo slut, and she is. This one is the turboest of all the sluts. Like right away, people can get away with everything when dealing with her. I'm gonna try and name like almost every single good game that I know of, because I know that I talk so much shit about other developers, but that comes from a place of love, honestly, because I actually want to see people do better, or actually like try and do better games or longer games, or but you know, everybody's so obsessed with the quick money, the cash grab and whatnot, man. I want to see actual art be more supported. I want to see people actually praise and get behind the games that actually deserve to be praised. And listen, if this is my way of doing some sort of support or word of mouth or whatever it is, this is the way I'm gonna do it. And hopefully people check out these games and they try it, and if they like it, support them and whatnot. So this game has obviously 2 things that are amazing about it, which is the art and the animations. The animations are really good. Obviously the story, although it feels a little bit generic, the context in which he delivers the scenes is super hot. And not only this game, I urge you to check it out on the L site, and then also check out his other games, especially the Lady Knight something. I don't remember the name of the exact name of the game, but I feel like it's NTR Knight or whatever it's called. I think it's literally that, like NTR Knight. This is like the name of this game is technically the sexy fate of an elf sent to the modern world, or how people call it, modern pink elf. The developer is called Warshop. He has actually released 2 doujins and 4 games. His first 2 games felt kind of short, which was Hentai Life with May, and the other one was like Night of the Icicle Kiara, which, if I'm not mistaken, Night of the Icicle was a game that another developer at some point decided to actually try and get it on Steam, just because of how much he loved these games. So another developer helped him get his stuff on Steam. So that gives you an idea of how peak his games are. The other game that I wanted to talk about, which is the NTR Nitus. I can't, because even the title picture is kind of like, if I'm gonna censor it, I'm gonna censor the whole thing. You're not gonna see anything. But NTR Nitus, as that flaw for me, which is a flaw, it's like, oh man, I wish it was made different. Again, because I like coercion, I like corruption, I like progressive moral degeneration and whatnot. But this is an example of like, this is not like a make it or break it. To me, the game will be better if there was like moral degeneration, if it was progressive. However, these games, this and the NTR Nitus, are a perfect example of, they are turbo sluts right away. Even though for the other one, there's kind of like an excuse to why it happens, but the game still manages to deliver, just based on the quality of the world, the animations, the story, above all the context of the scenes, the soundtrack and whatnot. You can definitely tell that this guy puts a lot of passion into his games. And just to give you an idea, this is kind of crazy. Like, he released his first game on April 2020. He released the second one on February 2021. A huge game, like big game, bigger than most of the things that you see nowadays. The third one was like June 2022, and the NTR Nitus was November 2023. So we haven't got anything for 2024. We're in 2025. I actually need to check his blog to see if he's working on something, and I'm pretty sure that we follow each other on X. But this might be a good thing or a bad thing, because this might mean he might be close to releasing a game, or it can be a bad thing and it might mean that he has quit. But from the story, from the context and whatnot, even though we have kind of like turbo sluts in this game, I definitely suggest, if you like NTR, check out both these games. All of his games really, but the last 2 were like peak quality, and that's it. I think like this is like the 10th game that I've kind of like advertised for today. I'm gonna try and get behind some other games. Like I said, I probably have at least like 100 that I wanna like share with you guys. This game is gonna hit all the right spots if you want a quick fap. If that's for you. If you want a story, well, it's not amazing, but you know, context is really good. If you just want to enjoy an entire game for actual hours and play it and see like character development and whatnot, you probably might gonna like the NTR Nitus a little bit more. If you're like me, if you actually like story context, if you actually like to get immersed in the thing. But if you know, if you're more about the quick fire, sure, this game probably might be more for you. The context of the scenes is pretty nice. It has like 4 or 5 or 6 different routes. But I definitely urge you guys to check this out and check the other games as well. But start with this one in the NTR Nitus, and there's English translations for both, I know for sure. And then if you like it, check out his other games. Obviously, they might not be as good as this one, because you can tell that there was a learning process, and even his art quality has improved since then. But you can definitely tell the difference between 2020 and the last one, which came out in November 2023. I hope you guys enjoy this small podcast. I'll try to make it like, I'm not gonna promise I'm gonna make it every Friday, but I'm gonna try to make it kind of like I'm gonna try and make it regularly, and try to put out some games out there and try to explain what I thought it was good about that game or the developer or whatever it was. And I know that right now we're only talking about RPG Maker Hentai games, but I promise that there's a lot of different games with crazy gameplays that I can't wait to tell you guys. Kind of like one of my favorite games, which Edwin keeps making fun of me. I call it Anti-Angry Birds, but there's a game called Flying Hero Princess something Flying Princess Interbreathe, where the gameplay is what I absolutely love about it. And you know, there's a bunch of like anti masterpieces out there that I can't wait to tell you guys, especially for the people that only are used to playing like visual novels and RPG Maker Hentai games. I'm going to put you into some mold masterpieces that you probably never heard about, some visual novels. There's all sorts of like crazy hentai games that you can tell that someone put a lot of wrench time creating those amazing hentai games, those amazing experiences for us. And I hope to share as many as I possibly can remember with you guys, and hopefully, you know, you'll get a bunch of recommendations where you can try and enjoy games, hopefully as much as you enjoy Fleeting Aries and our other creations. Other than that, Isaac and I, now to, you know, pull my own flames for a second, Isaac and I are trying to finish the Christmas patch. If he's not able to finish it today, I'm probably gonna put the wrench time over the weekend, so Monday for sure. I wish we could release it today, but he's not giving me any feedback, which means he's probably not back from doing the stuff with his kids. Monday, the Christmas patch for sure. It's looking fucking amazing. I promise it's worth all the wait that you guys had for the final chapter, because there's a lot of dialogue that wasn't in there that is going to make it so much better than it already is. And of course, it's free, so don't forget to pick it up. You don't have to pay anything for it, and it's standalone. Don't be tricked. Just go to our website and get it, or our Discord. Yeah, we're already working on the second patch of Journey Abroad that will obviously come out, I feel like March 31st, because 30 is a Sunday, if I recall correctly. So it's probably going to come out either on Friday or Monday after that, which is the 31st. So we'll see. Hopefully we can get it out on the Friday, which is like the 28th. You know, the month after that, we're going to be releasing Bloodlust, so everything is looking super fucking nice. The podcast is happening every week, which is also super fucking nice, and I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, which was, you know, kind of different, but hopefully I can get you guys in on some hentai games, so that you guys can try, and maybe we can have some discussions on the chat which games you've tried. I can't wait to see you guys actually give me feedback on some of those games, and then I can share some more games with you guys and we can talk about them. That was all for today. I hope you enjoyed. It was a little bit awkward as usual, mostly because we try to wing everything and we don't have a script or anything like that. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys check out those games. Some of them you're gonna have a really good time with. So yeah, listen, if you want to wait for the Christmas patch and you don't know what to do and you haven't played any of these games, well, now you do. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys Monday, hopefully with the patch and the podcast at the same time, 8 p.m. GMT. We're gonna try to go for like an hour. We'll see. Much love, everyone. Thank you for showing up, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.